Everyone's under pressure. Joe Dumars is calling the shot. Willie Green's coaching for his future. And Zion Williamson's running out of time to prove he's the guy. What does success look like for the Pelicans this season? Let's break it down right now in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans in NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, here with y'all on this Thursday, and we are going to be looking at what makes a successful season for the Pelicans, but individuals associated with the team, not just the players. We will look at Zion Williamson, Trey Murphy, the rookies as well, but I want to look at Joe Dumars and head coach Willie Green as well. What is a successful season for them? Because they're just as important pieces when it comes down to it. So we're going to cover it all in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And we're also available on YouTube. And don't forget, you can follow us as well on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network every single weekday at 10:30 a.m. and become an everydayer. That means you listen every day to Locked On Pelicans. And if you're an everydayer, let me know in the comments down below. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Success. What's it going to mean for the Pelicans this season? Look, we're going to use a realistic measure of success. It's not going to be win a title or anything like that, right? Because that's not probably going to be a thing. That would obviously be a successful season. But let's just kind of get to that first bar that this team needs to clear and what success is going to look like for everyone individually here. And I want to start with Joe Dumars, who's had an offseason of remaking this roster where most media, 95+% has been highly critical of. So here's what is a successful season to him. It has less to do with the wins and losses, though certainly making the playoffs would be a bonus. And this goes to what we've been talking about a lot this week. What Joe Dumars needs to do this season, what would make it successful, if he establishes a clear organizational direction, whether that's building around Zion Williamson, whether it's pivoting to youth. They need to figure that out. And thus, once you have the direction, execute around it, right? Execute a meaningful trade or two that either continues to build around Zion Williamson, going all in on your, win now timeline, or trade pieces away, get good stuff in return, and pivot to Jeremiah Fears, Derek Queen, Trey Murphy, and the rest of the young guys on this roster, right? That I think is going to be one of the just most important things, is figure out the direction of the franchise and work towards building to that. I also think he needs to work hard to change the perception around the team. This is something that I've been hammering over the past couple of weeks. The everydayers are probably sick of it to a certain degree, but there's a reason people are down on the team. This team just does not have the best reputation. They need to work on fixing that. Fixing that tends to be win a lot of games and win consistently. So put yourself in the best position to be able to do that, right? You're not going to be able to change the perception around the team in one evening, right? In one season here. It's going to take more than one move to change the perception around this franchise. It's going to be set yourself up to change the perception of this franchise. That goes back to picking a direction, in my opinion. They need to figure out where they are going. Where is this train, this bus, this boat heading right now? We have an idea of where they could go, but I don't think they've committed to which path they want to take just yet, and instead are trying to execute a two-timeline path, which means you tend not to do either one particularly well. So he absolutely, right now, Joe Dumars needs to figure out the vision, the clear vision here. So maybe that's toughness, right? That's something, aggression. Figure all of that out and just don't sit on your hands if things start to stall mid-season, whether it's winning or with the youth movement here. You need to figure out the direction they're going. Pick a direction. To me, that's the most success. That would be the clear sign of success for Joe Dumars, is figuring that out. Soft rebuild, be competitive, full rebuild, whatever it might be. Making the playoffs is lagniappe. If you can do all of that while still getting into the play-in tournament, we are going to call that a massively successful season, especially because the over-under for wins per FanDuel is not great, right? So if you can kind of shoot above that, I'm going to call that some success too. Now let's look at head coach Willie Green, because I think this one's kind of interesting. He's coaching for his job, right? Like, he's coaching for his job. It's truly that simple here with everything. So if he's doing that, win games. It's win games, but it's more than just that, right? If you're trying to build a sustainable direction that you're in, it's going to take more than just win. The bare minimum is win and get into the playoffs. That's a successful season to Willie Green. We can just stop it right there, right? But there's more. Willie Green does need to show growth, particularly as a tactician this season. We've seen that he can connect with players, but success for him is going to be beyond that, right? You need to build a consistent offensive identity. Now, all of this hasn't been his fault. With players in and out of the lineups due to injuries, it's tough to build a consistent identity. They tried to build a Zion-less offensive identity one year, and it just didn't work. So if Zion's not playing, I mean, what can you do, right? Trust me, we're going to get to Zion here in the next segment. But figure out what your offensive identity is and get the buy-in from everybody here. And what you also definitely need to see is better late-game execution. 2 years ago, the team couldn't come back if they were down in the fourth quarter, right? How many leads did they blow at halftime of games this past season? You can't do that, right? You need to clean all of that up. That could easily get the Pelicans 5 to 10 more wins alone, with just better late game execution, plans, and things like that. That is something that the Pelicans have struggled with. You cannot do that. If he can get this team into the postseason, even through the play-in tournament, I'd find that a success given kind of the roster. But it also is going to depend on health and things like that too. But he just needs to show some growth and improve in the areas that he's needed to improve in. Look, if you get into the playoffs, winning a series obviously is going to save his job, or just like not getting completely outcoached or outperform the expectations, I think, at least in the playoffs, would go a long way depending on the matchup and the seed that you would have. But for Willie Green, it's just going to be win. This team's trying to win. I don't want to say they're set up necessarily to win, but they're trying to win. That's an important thing. The team needs to figure it out. They need to go out and execute, and we'll see what they're capable of doing when it comes to all of that. So coming up next, let's look at 4 players. We'll also probably tie this into tomorrow's show as well, and I want to look at some others on the team. But let's focus on Zion Williamson and Trey Murphy, arguably the 2 best players on the team right now. Let's break down what is a successful season to them, for them, coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by OpenPhone. If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you had an urgent need, maybe for a plumber or a service provider. That person didn't answer. Did you wait? Were you going to call them back? No, you moved on. You called the next person. I actually had this issue with a mechanic the other day. It's like I needed something in an emergency situation. Called like 4 people before one answered. That one answered. They got the business. It was that simple. And that's why you need OpenPhone. OpenPhone is the #1 business phone system built to streamline and scale your customer communications, all from an app on your phone or computer. So OpenPhone is going to let you manage calls and texts from a single app. And they have a shared inbox, which is a game-changing feature. Your team can jump into any conversation instantly without missing a beat. They also have an AI agent that can handle after-hours calls, answer common questions, and capture leads so you never miss a customer. OpenPhone is offering Locked On Pelicans listeners 20% off for the first 6 months at openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. That's openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. And if you have an existing number with another service, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra charge. OpenPhone, no missed calls, no missed customers. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well and become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday to the Locked On Pelicans podcast. And if you're an everydayer, I see y'all in the comments on YouTube. Let me know, though, so I can see y'all again here. I appreciate y'all so much for listening, whether you're a new listener or a long-time everydayer. I just appreciate you making Locked On Pelicans part of your day. And don't forget, you can watch Locked On Pelicans on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network, the same place you watch your Pelicans play. Now, for your second listen, it's game week. The Saints are in California for training camp, preseason practices before playing the Chargers. Ross Jackson is going to look at the QB battle, let you know who's going to be QB1 on Sunday, whatever day it is. I completely forget the day. Go make sure you're listening to Ross Jackson and the Locked On Saints podcast to know who is going to be getting those reps. He's breaking down the battle for you really intensely. He's also out there in California right now. So we're looking at success. What is success for the Pelicans? Look, it's not going to be winning a title. It might not even be making the playoffs, truthfully, given the way this roster does look a little bit wonky at times. But let's move from, the leadership, sets the tone for everything, but you need the players to go out and execute and be available. So let's shift to what I would call the faces of the franchise in Zion Williamson and right now, Trey Murphy. So let's go to Zion Williamson, right? Look, everything is still revolving around him. If he plays well, they can be competitive, right? And for that, you have to set the bar high. This isn't a rookie anymore. This is someone who's been around the league enough to know exactly what he needs to do and what's expected of him. And so this one starts probably about as simply as you think it probably will, right? He's got to stay healthy. He has to play 65 plus games. It really needs to be closer to 70 something games, in my opinion. He's just got to stay healthy. You remember he missed the opening game of last season, then came back from that, played a couple more, and just did not look particularly good, or just like Zion, before tweaking his hamstring and then missing a bunch of games before returning in the new year. And only then was he starting to look like himself. Look, by staying healthy, it means you've got to do the right things in the offseason, and he hasn't done that. You've heard my tone shift over the past year or so to being more out on Zion Williamson because it just feels like you can't rely on him to do the things he needs to do. It's just a fact of the matter. If he was showing up, in shape at the start of every season and then an injury happens, it would be a different story. But he's not doing that. So that's definitely adding more wear and tear on his body, leading to these injuries. Once the season starts, he realizes he's not quite in game shape. Is he putting in extra work at the training facility? That's great. Love that. But not if it overextends your body that then you suffer a hamstring injury. Do the other work so you're not quite in maintenance mode in the regular season, but you get the point that I'm trying to make. He needs to be healthy, and it's going to start with what he's doing this offseason, and we're hoping, we've said this a million times before, that it's Joe Dumars this time will get through to him. If Zion is on the floor consistently, that is the most important thing for the Pelicans in terms of win-loss record, but also potentially trading him in the future. But we're not getting into that right now. That doesn't matter to him here. You also want to see him be the man in the fourth quarter this season. The Pelicans struggle in clutch situations. We talked about that under head coach Willie Green. He's got to be leading the team in clutch minutes, in clutch scoring, and be basically the guy with the ball in the fourth quarter. Hasn't always been there because he's not there, or he's been struggling a little bit, right? That's what you need from him in this sort of thing. You also want to make sure that he maintains that same defensive, intensity that he showed last season. That was impressive. That was really impressive seeing him commit on the defensive side of the ball. When I was on with Josh Lloyd on Locked On Fantasy Basketball, we were discussing that. That's the sign of a guy that's bought in. Guys with the high usage rate that Zion Williamson has, that carries such a load offensively, even in terms of the physical side of getting hacked, the beating it takes on your body, it's very easy and frankly understandable for them to take defensive possessions off. But that's not what you saw from Zion Williamson last year, right? He was bought in on both sides of the ball. He literally played the best basketball of his career when he returned from that hamstring injury through when they shut him down at the end of the regular season. He looked that good. Do it again. Do it again. You've shown you can do it. There's no excuse not to do it at this point in time. I definitely think he is absolutely capable of being that kind of guy. And when he does, he's a top 15, top 10, top 20 player easily in the NBA, right? Success this year for Zion Williamson is not going to be about highlights, right? It's about his impact in terms of winning on the court. And to do that, you need to be out there consistently, right? You need to have your presence felt offensively and defensively. If you can, tighten up some of the handle a little bit, that'd go a long way. Adding a little bit more of a varied offensive game is fine. If he does that, if not, it's fine too. Just be out there consistently and make an impact and help this team win games. It's that simple, right? We could have left this as the bullet point of stay healthy. Stay healthy, please. Otherwise, it's going to show which direction the Pelicans need to go in, right? They're going to pivot, and it's going to be to the youth movement, and that's what's going to lead to Zion either getting waived next offseason or being traded at some point in time, right? This is his chance to own the team. Joe Dumars has basically even said, it's your team. It's your turn. They've kind of empowered him in a way that maybe hasn't been empowered before. You've got to live up to that. That's what star players do. So start making, not start, I'm sure he started, but you've got to do the right things and you've got to be healthy. And that's going to really mean taking care of your body in a way that he, maybe now hasn't before. So let's look at Trey Murphy III here, because I think this one's going to be kind of interesting because he's in line for a breakout year. This is going to be his 5th year. His extension is kicking in at $25 million per season. And look, his numbers have been good, right? When you watched him play last year in 53 games, 51 starts, right? 21.2 points per game. Those are exceptional numbers. 36% from 3. We know that number could be higher, but on 8 attempts per game is phenomenal. 3.5 assists, 5.1 rebounds. Now, you didn't play with Zion a ton, so those numbers might shift a little bit. You're also adding Jordan Poole in, who, on Locked On Fantasy Basketball, we were saying, is Poole going to have a higher usage rate than Trey Murphy? It should be Trey Murphy. Than Jordan Poole, but Poole's going to have an outsized role on this team. So that might shift those points per game numbers down some. But if Trey Murphy can average 20 plus points per game again this season, while he's going to be more of a number 2 guy rather than a number 1 like he was the majority of last season, I think that's really encouraging. And I think that's going to show something very good, right? He needs to be locked in as a starter. And that's more on head coach Willie Green than Trey Murphy is, right? It should be Trey starting. There's not a question, in my opinion, about that. So as a starter, I think somewhere around 18 to 21 points is definitely a success for him, even if that drops a little bit below what he did last season. He's also, got to get to 38-40% from 3 on high volume. That's really important too. He does the volume thing. It's just make sure the numbers, you're hitting those shots. At times he takes some deeper threes than you'd like that are like, Trey, maybe not that shot, please. Even though he tends to be really good and those are elite spacing shots, you've got to hit him. And that's the important thing, I think, when it comes to him. You'd like to see a little bit more secondary playmaking from him. I'd like to see him tighten his handle a little bit. He's gotten much better at attacking closeouts. He's already added to his repertoire, to his bag of mid-range and ways to kind of score at the rim. We know he can dunk. Some secondary playmaking a little bit more. If he can get to 3.5, 4 assists again per game, those are phenomenal numbers for him. But he's got to be more consistent on defensive rebounding, in my opinion, and defense too. Those are the areas where he has room to grow. The size is there, and he knows that rebounding is just a mindset thing. It's a go and get the ball, right? It's not a technique. It's not anything else. It's just hustle for the ball, have that aggressive mindset. When his mom called him out for it, he's talked about it, in a press conference, and he's just got to go and do it, and he knows that. So I already know he has the right attitude to have this kind of success. From there, it's make sure you're as good as you can be defensively. Early on in his tenure here, it was a little bit rocky defensively at times. We've seen him improve, but with that size, with the athleticism, that he has, he can be a very good to elite defender, in my opinion. That's where you want to see him grow, is hustling on that side of the ball consistently, not getting beat, those type of things. But if he can just carve out himself as the number 2 guy on the team, which he's going to go in having that, I think, live up to that, and that's going to be a very successful season, in my opinion, for Trey Murphy III. Now let's focus on the rookies, right? The foundation is there with Zion and Trey and the front office stuff. The future's got to flash a little bit too. Let's turn to the rookies coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime is my go-to ticketing app. Those moments when you just decide last minute you want to go to a sporting event, a concert, a comedy show, theater, whatever it might be, you just want to be there, right? That's where Gametime comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last minute tickets without the stress. So with the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Gametime makes it possible. Gametime makes buying tickets fast and simple, and prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch, or the start of your event, or tip-off, or kickoff. And they've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. So Gametime is the official ticketing partner of Locked On MLB, making it easy to browse the app for an exciting upcoming MLB game. Maybe you just want to be in the stands for some preseason football. College football's around the corner as well. And if you're tired of scrolling to find the best deal, Gametime's zone deals pick the best seats in your section for you. Pick the section you want. They're just going to give you the best price, the best seats. Really, really easy. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well and become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday to the Locked On Pelicans podcast. For your second listen, it's Locked On Fantasy Basketball. You're going to be drafting soon. Josh Lloyd is the GOAT. I'm on there. All of our Locked On hosts are on there, breaking down the teams and the biggest storylines, the questions you have to go win your league and get bragging rights. Make Locked On Fantasy Basketball part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, your second listen today. So we're looking at success. What's success for everybody individually, right? We looked at Joe Dumars, Willie Green, Zion Williamson, Trey Murphy. Let's go to the two impactful rookies, Jeremiah Fears and Derek Queen. What does success look like for them? And this is going to be a little bit different depending on how the season goes, but I think we can kind of start with these points. With Jeremiah Fears, the goal isn't to be a star right away. It's just to show the flashes that you need. They're not going to be the guys that are carrying the team, nor should rookies be expected to. But you want to show the promise, right? Even if these guys kind of bounce between the G League and the bench, and I don't think they're really going to go down to the G League, you want them to show the signs, right? For Jeremiah Fears, it's going to be, a successful season is simply carving out minutes as the backup point guard by January, February, I think, and basically looking like a guy who belongs on an NBA floor. And I think he'll be able to do that, right? Show that you can get downhill and score at the rim and improve on that as the season goes on. I don't think he's going to be great at finishing around the rim to start. I think he'll be able to get there, but I think he's going to need some time to kind of figure out exactly what to do, what gets called a foul, what doesn't. And once he discovers that, just consistently improve on that, right? If he can become more of a playmaker and start to kind of look for others on some of those drives and build some chemistry with his teammates, it's a little bit of lanyap there, but you'd like to see that as well. Kind of show off the pick and roll game with Zion Williamson. Just show the promise of why you were the 7th overall pick. And I have no doubt that Jeremiah Fears absolutely will be able to do that, in my opinion. More lanyap for that would be get that jumper going a little bit. If he can develop that 3-point shot, and he's shown some flashes of it, that's what you want to see. That's what you want to see. Just kind of show the glimpses, the flashes of the player that he can be. That's going to be a really important thing. Can you see him kind of manipulate a defense? Does he have that kind of control over his offensive game to kind of control whether he's going fast, slow, switch those kind of gears, right? That's what you're looking for with him. For Derek Queen, it's going to probably be a slower ramp up for him, especially given the injury and some of the time that he's going to miss, right? But what you want to see for Queen is this. Don't look lost. Don't look like a bust, right? Show that, again, you belong in the NBA. And What that is going to mean is, can you score in the post? Can you hang with some of the bigs that we're seeing right now and do it somewhat successfully? It's easier said than done, especially for a rookie, right? This is going to be a big jump in physicality for him. And he has the frame and the size to be able to be really good with that sort of thing. Show you belong. Beyond that, in terms of the offensive stuff, right? Short roll playmaking would go such a long way for him. Operate in the pick and roll, but more as a playmaker rather than a scorer at times. He has shown the ability to be an exceptional passer. His skill set somewhat overlaps with Zion Williamson with that, where you can kind of run them as like point forwards or something along those lines. That's what you're looking for there. Show that you're this creative big that is unique and unlike anyone else that was in this draft, right? Show that you are somewhat of a unicorn, if you will. Show that you're not Asa Newell, right? That's a rim protecting, 3-point shooting, maybe athletic big, right? Could have been good for New Orleans. They need a guy like that. But you can get those type of guys. You don't get these type of creative passing, high post operating big men that can almost act as point guards for you all the time, that potentially have range to shoot from three. Show those type of skills off, and then show like some defensive potential, please. I don't think he's going to be great defensively, but you don't want him to look completely lost or like a liability out there. He should be a fine enough rebounder, in my opinion. It's basically just show legitimate flashes of being, long-term guys for both of them, I think. Particularly in those spot minutes that they're going to get to start the year. That's how they're going to earn rotation minutes and stay out there on the court. So let me know what you think success looks like for Joe Dumars, Willie Green, Zion, Trey, Queen, and Fears. I want to look at Jordan Poole in tomorrow's show, DeJounte Murray as well, and Herb Jones, and we'll continue looking at success for the team overall, in particular some of these players. We might just run through the rest of the roster tomorrow, and we'll probably tie it into Monday's show as well. So that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Pelicans. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. This is the Locked On Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Don't forget, you can watch us on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network at every single weekday at 10:30 a.m., same place you watch your Pelicans play. Appreciate y'all listening, and I'll be back with y'all tomorrow.